Do not take this to the bank and try and cash it.
The evolutionary theory of ideologies will be used to examine how ideologies lead to genocide. A study of the dynamics of ideology may be appropriate in preventing genocides and future genocides because whereas classical theories were born out of the same diseased ecology, evolutionary theory of ideologies, incorporating a cross-disciplinary approach devoid of faith-based reasoning, could prescribe solutions to actually heal the overall ecology as opposed to prescribing or perpetuating the status quo. However, I would like to make it explicitly clear that this paper is not discussing the evolutionary differences of races, but of ideologies. Race in itself is a mutated product of evolving ideologies. Race was created to dominate and classify groups of people. Science, through the study of genetics, can find no scientific evidence of racial differences. Ideologies are associated with different groups or classes which have their own myths, maybe their own culture. And this may be one of the reasons for social fragmentation, conflict in our world. And we all tend to identify ourselves with a subgroup based on race, class, nationality, wealth, or occupation, among others. Therefore, we all have different myths and symbols based on our ideologies. Our ideologies force groups to believe that they are the chosen people, while the other group is made up of demons and monsters. Daniel Dennett, a prominent philosopher and acknowledged atheist, warns about the dangers of irrationality based on myths, saying that it is this imperviousness to reason, I think, the property we should most fear in religion. Other institutions or traditions may encourage a certain amount of it, but only religion demands it as a sacred duty. And I contend it is also ideologies that demand irrationality as a sacred duty. An ideology always implies another ideology with it is in dynamic relationship with. Ideologies are like species. They compete for existence. Through the process of natural selection, ideology A must adapt to the new environment in a way that produces a more favorable outcome based on its fitness than ideology A. And if a third ideology emerges, ideology C, out of a combination of ideology A and ideology not A, ideology C will be in conflict with ideology A and C. And if ideology A wins out, regardless of the intended outcome, it will be transmitted to the next player, it will be passed on. So that's that. And then this is where I kind of get into this hypercriticism process that explains how a simple idea, like say I'm going to protect the people in my clan, leads to like a sovereign nation, and it just rapidly mutates. Acts of aggression may restore a person's sense of self-respect, honor, justice, or deservingness. And once an ideology has evolved into an exclusionary ideology, the people governed by the new ideology have to recreate their own self-image. And since it's the ideology that's created a formula for doing so, acts of aggression toward the targeted group affirm the sense of self. As an ideology becomes more aggressive, the individual therefore must also become more aggressive. This is done to either recreate the self-image or to remain at the newly found status level based on the previous acts of aggression. Escalation also occurs either to reinforce that the ideology is accurate in producing a predicted outcome, or the ideology evolves, meaning that it intensifies to ensure that predicted outcome. Ideologies co-evolve with behavior. Since ideologies dictate behavior and behavior and outcome force ideologies to evolve, when either are mutating rapidly, hypercriticism leads to an escalation in behavior and more dogmatic ideology. When protecting the self-esteem, an individual's behavior may impact very negatively on both the self and others, leading to aggression and anger. This is especially true when the perceived threat threatens the self-worth. And since it is, once again, the belief system that creates and defines this self-worth, is the ideology and the unintended or intended byproducts that are racist, exclusionary, or evil. The cycle of image creation is an ongoing process that evolves with the ideology. As the ideology becomes more exclusionary, so do the behaviors. Exclusionary ideologies and all other belief systems, according to my theory, set up a dogmatic, self-sealing debate based on myth that are cultural and spiritual, and are guided by faith, whether they're religious or experiential. In addition, Hitler made the remark that Uncle Tom's Cabin was one of the world's few great books. Gone with the Wind was a meta-reenactment of the post-bellum ideology. This is a dramatization of a script based on an individual writer's interpretation of an ideology. And the ideology in and of itself includes distortions and misinterpretations. So when Hitler experienced the film, he was experiencing the ideology from a fifth degree of separation. Hitler's version of segregation was a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. Like one of the ladies just mentioned, that nothing that Hitler really did was new. He adapted it to fit his needs. And this process, referred to by Susan Blackmore, is called copy the product. And it is prone to error since it requires an analytic capability of the ideology itself and then a synthetic ability to combine the recognized elements. Any inserted errors will be passed on at each transmission. Hitler's consumption of American fascism was made evident in speeches before 1933, which are filled with vicious remarks about blacks, and warned of the racial bastardization of German culture and music, and he also used the very American term nigger. Hitler warned of the continuing danger of racial mixing because culture and music were being nigerified. This led to the banning of Negro culture in 1933, and popular Nazi publications to support racist ideological statements such as "take up the natural arms which our men in the South resort to, lynch, hang every black man who assaults a white person." W.E.B. Du Bois said, Hitler and the Third Reich had based its program of racial repression on the prevailing laws and customs in the southern part of the United States. The American fascism ideology replicated itself in Germany and was unsuccessful at creating the utopian Aryan world. Through hypercriticism, the ideology was forced to adapt to its new environment. The German version assimilated long-held European anti-Semitic myths into the white supremacy ideology. The ideology proposed that anyone not Aryan was to blame for Germany's plight. This mutated ideology categorized Jews with blacks, both less than human, and prescribed the treatment of these groups. Once the non-ideologues, the Jews and the blacks and anyone not Aryan, were marginalized and conditions didn't improve, the ideology was either forced to adapt or just disappear and be proven ineffective. So conversely, where the conditions did improve, the ideologues were also forced to adapt further, to further improve the conditions, thus creating a self-sealing justification for escalation, leading to imprisonment, persecution, and elimination. There was a particular author who suggested that we study hate speak like we study viruses. He made a recommendation to the World Health Organization that we set up like listening centers to measure the level of severity, to see if it's rapidly increasing, just like we would study a virus, if it's spreading, and how many people are actually infected with this exclusionary ideology, affected by this hate. And in Jane Doherty, she also suggests to as a cognitive window into the ideologies, to use the metaphors that they use and how that relates to the narrative itself. And I think if we combine those two, we could maybe not eliminate these ideologies, but at least recognize them as they're growing before they become, really harmful. And the second suggestion is to really understand the formulation of ideologies. Like AK back there, he was talking, about changing this mentality, but we don't have a mentality to replace it with, because they all come out of, the same environment where all the other ideologies come from, or the beliefs. So I think it's imperative that we someone smarter than I am comes up with a way to formulate new ideologies that are constructive as opposed to deconstructive. That's all I got.